as we get started today, I want to remind you that the preliminary philosophy of ministry paper is due a week from tomorrow. So yes, that is Thursday, and it's the 29th, so a week from tomorrow. The assignment is available on Blackboard. You can submit it through Blackboard, or you can send it to me as an email. Either way is fine. But don't forget that that is coming up. I wanted to take some time to finish up with some things from Monday. As we were finishing Monday, we were talking about theology, the process for theology, and thinking about theologically answering or addressing a variety of issues that might come up in a specific kind of church setting. I want to remind you just briefly of that process that we talked about. So first of all, it's important to identify what's at stake. What is the issue related to the specific question? What is that? What is the point of asking such a question? And having kind of determined what it is that you're really looking at, looking for, thinking about, moving on then to talking about the specific passages that relate to that subject, investigating, exegeting, spending time with them before moving on. And then out of that, examining the principles that are present, thinking about, are those things meant for all time? Are they meant for a specific cultural context? How does that relate to current issues or current application? Possibly addressing the historical context of the early church or church history in general, and thinking about how did the early church work through some of these issues. Again, that's not meant to say that just because they did it, it's okay, or just because they didn't do it, it's not okay, or any sort of combination in between. But it does help us see some things related to how other Christians have interpreted it. And then finally, drawing that conclusion, but also kind of thinking about the justification or the determination of why is it that this is the best result, or this is the best course of action, right? Not just saying, yes, let's do this, but thinking about, all right, why? How can we express or explain this is why this is the best course of action? We looked at an example on Monday of a church that was landlocked, thinking about, all right, what do we do as a church where we don't have the ability to build, but we have this seating issue, this parking issue. So what do we do about that? And so I want to talk through two other examples, kind of work through some other things to kind of ingrain this process in you, as well as think about how this would apply in a real situation. So let's first start with an issue related to worship and the audiovisual equipment used in worship. So a suggestion's been made that the church should improve its audiovisual equipment for worship. The cost will be $15,000 should the church do this. So let's first think through what's at stake at this question.
This is the same church that is landlocked.
No, let's say it's a completely different church. Right? It doesn't have to. They seem to have a lot of issues. Completely different setting. So what's at stake?
Well, obviously, forecast about $15,000.
Okay.
Whether it's necessary or not.
Okay. So what's at stake has to do with the usage of funds. All right. Is this appropriate use of funds? But then also kind of thinking about the opportunity, what's called the opportunity cost. If I spend this money on this particular item, in this case audiovisual equipment, I cannot use that money for something else. Right? And so am I willing to spend that money because the something else that I could do with it isn't as important as this? Okay, so there's the actual financial issue. What else is at stake in a question like that?
Very split.
Okay, maybe there's some issues with some of the members toward the back of the auditorium can't hear, and so we're just leaving.
I'm disagreeing.
Okay, all right. So the disagreement as well could be an issue. What else might be at stake here?
Weighing the options compared to other needs that might also be issued.
Okay, so kind of similar to the financial cost is, what should our attention be on, right? Do we need to focus on this issue, or should we be focusing on other issues that are going on in the congregation? What else? What else would be at stake, an issue, something like updating your audio-visual equipment? The financial cost, where our attention should be, and the possible disagreement or losing members related to disagreements over it.
Depending on exactly what kind of audio-visual equipment we're talking about, it could end up being more of a detriment to worship.
Okay, so audio-visual equipment in the context, we're talking about worship, right? I mean, it has something to do with worship, right? And so the idea is that our worship will be enhanced, or maybe our worship is being stunted related to the audio-visual equipment we have, right? So worship is kind of connected in with this as well.
Are we talking about getting speakers that genuinely work, or strobe lights?
Yeah, and then, what kind of audio-visual equipment are we talking about? Are we trying to just, the speakers are going out, we need new speakers, or the projector's going out, we need a new projector, or is it we're trying to create an atmosphere here that's, and so it's not just an issue of the finances, right? Can we afford this or not? Right? And there are a lot of other issues related to this, right? So there's obviously the financial question. Right, does this reflect good stewardship of the money that the church is collecting? Does this represent, is this going to be approached in such a way that will make sure everybody comes together and unites on it? Is this the area we should be focusing on? What are we trying to do in bringing in new audiovisual equipment with respect to worship and unity? And so all of those kind of things are wrapped up in what seems to be originally kind of a simple question: do we have the money for it or not? But if we just focus on the issue of do we have the money for it or not, we might ignore the impact it would have in other areas. All right, so we've kind of identified some issues that need to be addressed, need to be thought about in making this decision. What kinds of passages, right? I mean, if you don't know a specific passage, that's fine, but what kinds of passages, what kinds of scriptures would you be looking for to try and help you and the people you're working with make this decision? Again, it doesn't have to be, Acts chapter 5, verse whatever, but the kind of scriptures you would look at.
Just Paul had a lot to say about what it meant to be the church and really run the church, even on the logistics side like this. You can look good on that.
Okay, so you could look at verses related to kind of church administration, unity of the church, what it means to be the church, right? And thinking, does this, if we purchase this, does that enhance this, or does it detract from it? Right? Are we still kind of, is this going to help us be the church better, or is this going to maybe draw us away from that? What other kind of passages would you look at?
Corinthians,
Okay.
maybe Titus.
Yeah, you look at those passages that, I mean, Titus, of course, talks a lot about leadership in the church and what leadership is supposed to do. Corinthians, of course, talks about division in the church and trying to heal those divisions. I would think probably some passages on worship and thinking about, okay, this is what worship is supposed to be about. Is this enhancing it, or is it going to maybe pull us away from worship, and people are going to be so focused on the oh, that's really great presentation, or oh, it really sounds good. Are we using the strobe light, right? What is it? Is this going to enhance our worship or help us to worship together more? Or, okay, the people in the back can hear what the song leader is saying, or we can see the words more clearly on the PowerPoint. And so you want to think about, okay, all right, we've kind of identified our issues and how this all relates to the specific issue. So, what passages address that? So what are some passages on worship? What are some passages on administration? What are some passages on stewardship? All right, and how we should use the funds that God entrusted to us, and maybe even, related to the mission of the church. Does this help us address that mission more fully? Or is it maybe what we're doing here is just kind of making it more comfortable or entertaining worship, and it's not really going to either improve our fellowship, or it's not going to help us reach out and share with others, or we could use these funds to help fund a homeless ministry, right? And so thinking about, all those kind of things. And so that idea of opportunity cost is an important one here, not just because it's financial, but also if we spend our focus on audio-visual, what are other things that are going to be left out? Right? Because, a church may already be funding, right? It could be a church that is sacrificially giving, right? And so there's a lot of money coming in, and there are a lot of good works being done already, right? And so there could be a situation where you say, yeah, this is going to help us as a church to do these kind of things. And so, but in other cases it might be, audio-visual equipment is fine, but we're not reaching out to the community around us. So maybe we ought to take this money, right, and use it to do something for the community, or use it to help some of the members we have, right? Maybe we're a congregation where there's a lot of members that have lost their jobs recently, right? Maybe we need to be helping them while they get back on their feet instead of, updating the speaker, right? So, a lot of things go into addressing a question like this. All right. Number 2, an elder has read a book saying the church's growth from small groups. Maybe a lot of you are already in congregations that use small groups, but there's still a lot that don't. He proposes the other elders that they dissolve Sunday evening services, encourage everyone to meet in life groups. Should the other elders agree? These are both real types of questions, right? These are the kind of things that come up in the lives of congregations. And if you are part of a ministry team, or if you are the pulpit minister and you have a board of elders where there's kind of leaders that are making these decisions, these are the kind of things that will come before elders, and elders will often bring in the ministers to kind of talk through some of these things, right? So, if you're in a church that uses small groups, or if you're in a church that doesn't use small groups, right now that's kind of secondary to the issue. Right? We're talking about a congregation that doesn't have them and wants to move into having them. So, what are the issues at stake in this question of transitioning to small groups?
One would be that some of the groups don't take it kind of seriously. Actual service on Sunday night.
Okay, what's the response going to be? Right? Are people really going to be using these to develop spiritually, or is it just going to be more of a get-together type of thing, right? And so we have food, and we don't really ever get around to talking about spiritual types of things, right? So maybe one concern about, is this truly going to help, right? So you got this book that says it's going to help, but for your congregation, is it really going to help? Or is there, you know your people pretty well, and you know that more likely than not they're going to look at it as a time to get together, not a time for any sort of spiritual growth. What other kind of issues would be at stake?
The attendance factor.
Okay, the attendance factor. Is this really going to, bring the number of people together? Right? Is it really going to help? In a lot of cases, some people would say, well, you have more people that will attend small groups than would attend the Sunday night service. Is that really what's going to happen? Are we going to really make an impact on people, or is it, the same number of people that would attend a Sunday evening service are going to be involved in a small group? Well, is that really going to? Is there a difference there? What other kinds of issues are at stake?
Within the church.
Right? Is this going to lead to the forming of cliques? It's going to cause division more than it's going to help people grow, more than it might bring unity or spiritual development. What else might be at stake? Maybe, and this kind of relates to some things that have already been said. What's the purpose of this? We're transitioning in this program. What are we trying to do? And what is it that we're trying to accomplish by going this route versus having a Sunday evening worship service? And then probably if we spent the time to think of some other issues that relate to this. So what kind of passages? What kind of passages would you go to try and answer this question?
Examples where the church met at people's homes.
Okay, thinking about how did the early church grow? All right, it seems like the idea here is this elder wants the church to grow, and so he's kind of come across this idea. So how did the early church grow? How did they meet together? What else? What other types of passages would you look at?
Maybe you could look at Acts 2, when it said they had everything in common, and maybe you can kind of get to know people better in a small group setting and be devoted to each other better that way.
Okay, I'm thinking about, again, kind of going back to that Acts, the pattern of the church in Acts, and saying, which model is going to help us be more devoted to the apostles' teaching, to fellowship, to breaking bread and prayer, right? Will this model help us do that in a way that maybe we're not currently getting? What other kind of passages would you look at? If I'm with a group of elders, right, we're trying to make this decision, I would say, are we still going to be able to fulfill our mission of knowing the flock, relating to the flock, and if we decide this is the way to go, how do we do that in such a way that we're still connected to the congregation, that we're shepherding the people under our charge? Right? So thinking about, okay, what is the purpose of elders, and how does that relate to you? And so, there are a lot of things that are related to this issue, and one thing that becomes easy for churches and ministers and ministries to do is just kind of look at a simplistic type of approach to this. Oh, I found this book that says churches grow through small groups. Okay, let's do that. Only to find out, okay, well, it might work for some churches, it doesn't work for us. Instead of thinking through some of these things, right? The same kind of thing with the money. We have the money, let's spend it. And instead of thinking, well, is that necessarily the best way to go? And so, if we're going to be people that are faithful to God, faithful to His Word, we need to, at various times, take the time to do these things. Now, it takes time, though. and it takes willingness and discipline to engage in those kind of processes. But they're important because there are some things that sometimes churches make decisions about, right? Ministers, elders make decisions about, that down the line, find out it's been detrimental to the church. Where if the time had been taken at the beginning when the decision was first proposed, that maybe some of those things could have been averted.